We're here. We've made it. This is the hang on. What's it called again? Oh yes, it's the Beating Anxiety Live. I promised I would go live at 8 o'clock this evening to share all things beating anxiety, and I wanted to keep my word. And I'm so excited to be here, and I can see people tuning in, and there's so much to share. But I also, you may have seen, I did promise a special guest today. And this is someone that I've known for a long time. He's a good friend. He's a respected colleague. He's already been live already today on YouTube. So he's a glutton for punishment. And we will, I was going to say wheel him out shortly, but he can hear all this. Yeah, some introduction, isn't it? We'll wheel him out. I will tell you a bit about my background for those of you who are tuning in and maybe haven't come across me for the first time. But the real star of the show today is... I went like this. I went to the wrong side. Tim Box.
Good evening. I'm here.
It's great to have you here. It's great to have you.
It's lovely to be here, Howard. Always lovely to spend time in your company.
Oh, it's so nice. And he lies so well. It's just beautiful.
A long week and I'm tired. That's why the lies don't sound quite so convincing.
Well, it also, you in fairness, may be fed up of me as well, because we often, lots of time will go past and we keep in touch and we do the odd Zoom and we talk shop and stuff. But actually, last week we spent a fair bit of time together. We spent 3 days at the UK Hypnosis Convention, where both Tim and I were speaking and sharing various things. And Tim did an awesome presentation. Absolutely loved it. And yeah, he's a good friend and a very respected change worker in his own right.
Thank you very much. That's a lovely thing to say. And and can I just reciprocate by saying your presentation was awesome as well, Howard? Weren't we just rolling around, patting each other on the back for being so...
Yeah, that would be lovely, wouldn't it? Yes. But no, in all seriousness, there are going to be people tuning in on my channel that perhaps haven't come across you before. So, Tim, can you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and who you are, what you do?
Okay, well, I'm my job title, mind coach and remedial hypnotist, which means basically I help people overcome all sorts of emotional and psychological issues. I mainly work with anxiety. That's my specialist area. A few years ago, I released my book called Clear Your Head, which is all about enjoying life without anxiety getting in the way. And then about 3 years ago, I did a TED talk called How to Stop Feeling Anxious About Anxiety. And that's probably anyone that does discover me on Tinternet. That's where they find me, and then occasionally they hop across to my YouTube channel, where I'm not a professional YouTuber. I'm actually a therapist working one-to-one like yourself, but yeah, there's a fair amount of videos that go up there, and I do lives like this one. And as you say, I've already been live to that. I mean, it never ends, does it? It's Friday night. Here I am chatting about anxiety.
I know, and I could hear someone was hoovering in the background earlier before we tuned in, but the hoovering's done.
That's it. We're all the housework's done, so we're all now to enjoy our Friday night and talk about anxiety together.
Fantastic. What could be better? And for those of you who are tuning in, who perhaps this is your first time tuning into the Howard Cooper's Rapid Change Works, I am an ex-anxiety sufferer. I was diagnosed when I was 15 as having panic attack and anxiety disorder. I was sent for 3.5 years with a lovely psychotherapist. I really liked her, very well intentioned, but after 3.5 years I found I was still having anxiety and panic, except now I had my therapist's theory as to why, which, I'll be honest, kind of nice to know. I don't even necessarily agree with it now, but there you go. Didn't make a big difference, but I became fascinated with there's got to be some solution-focused methods of help, and the stuff that I discovered, because it helped me so much quicker than anything else, I then decided that I have to share this stuff, and I trained up, and now in 2 decades into helping people. I think you used the phrase decades earlier, and I thought, oh, that sounds better than 10 years or 20 years. I'm going to start talking decades, you know.
I'll tell you something now. If it's 11 years, say over a decade now, that just sounds a bit more.
Right. You know. Over two decades I've been doing it. Wow. Does sound better. Yeah. Let's do that. But yeah, so what both of us bring to this is a background of having our own personal challenges, and then really working with real people on an ongoing basis. And whilst we have presences on YouTube and TikTok and various places, we're not armchair therapists, as it were. We actually have day in, day out, seeing people for anxiety help and support. A couple of people sharing comments, great, and saying hello. Linda says, hi, Howard, glad to see you. Lovely having you on live. Happy to be here. And Mario H. Oh, I think he's one of yours. I think he tuned into you earlier, Tim.
Might be that, but I'd love it if some of my people came across and found you as well, because you know, two people giving great advice is better than one person giving great advice. You know,
absolutely. And what do they say? Too many cooks make a really delicious dinner.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
In some instances, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so look, that's who we are, what we do. I must confess, I did tune into Tim's live earlier because I wanted to see what he was talking about, and he did say that I'm a little bit more structured. It wasn't always that way, but I've started doing these. I thought, let's think about it like daytime TV, right? Let's give it a structure, right? So let's go over. Sorry, the producer's talking to my ear. All right, yeah, no, we're gonna cover that. Yeah, that's fine. We're gonna go to the coming up. So let me tell you what's coming up today on Beating Anxiety Live. Tim and I are going to expose some anxiety-beating myths. Essentially, what we're talking about is, you know, we all often hear these things and these ideas around, well, the way to deal with anxiety is X, Y, Z, or anxiety is all about such and such a thing. Well, what if some of these old pieces of wisdom that keep getting bandied around are essentially just not true and aren't borne out in real life experience? And so we're going to bust some of those. It says Howard gets angry, but really we're both going to get angry. And I'm totally stealing this joke now, Tim, that you gave me earlier. I'm going to get on my soapbox and Tim's going to get on his Tim box. And we're going to share some things that irritate us or frustrate us about the anxiety-beating world, or the therapeutic advice that often gets bandied around. We also want to take some anxiety-beating questions. So if you have questions and you're thinking, please, I need some help, there's something that I'm really curious to know, then drop in the comments and let us know what specifically would you like help with. We have been pre-submitted some questions as well, so we'll try and get those covered too. We'll share some practical techniques. So I have got one ready to go. I know Tim's got something that he wants to share. And then probably we'll bid Tim farewell and we'll spend the last 3-4 minutes. I'll take you through a gentle relaxation, a gentle meditation, just so that you can finish the week on a high note and start your weekend feeling absolutely fantastic. So that is the plan. Sound good?
Sounds fantastic.
Oh, doesn't it just? It's like I've practiced or rehearsed this about 5 minutes ago. Okay, all right. So, by the way, just a quick thing. One of the things that I'm really keen to do is to help YouTube know that good quality anxiety beating help and support is worth putting out wider. And the way you can help do that is by simply liking or sharing. And if you share, it literally tells YouTube, the algorithm, that this is content worth pushing out, which means by default we can then help more people and more people that really need it. Tim, let's dive in, because I said we would do this. We would do some anxiety beating myths. And I'm curious, you have something that you'd like to share, some myth that...
I'm curious where you found that music, but anyway, let's move on from that, shall we?
Yeah, me too.
Right, okay, so, the big myth that I talk about, funny enough, it's really strange that we should be doing this time, because I've literally just recorded a video about the biggest anxiety myth, mistake, and misunderstanding. So that's my next video that's going up on my channel. But the myth of that, I see it all the time. The myth is that anxiety is an illness. And I think this is responsible for a lot of our slightly higher level anxiety responses that occur in the modern world. You know, there's obviously lots of things going on in this day and age that could potentially cause us to feel anxious. But the problem occurs when we start to get naturally quite high anxiety levels because there's a lot of stuff going on, or there's a lot of stuff that's very concerning for us in our lives. Maybe we're getting overwhelmed with so much stuff going, buzzing around in our head. At some point we start to notice, hey, I'm feeling really, really anxious all the time. I'm not completely convinced that's healthy. And then we might go somewhere to get advice on that, or even we might just go online to try and find out what's going on. And then we start to get the rhetoric that anxiety is our illness. It's something that's gone wrong with us. It's not that the world is throwing us more than a human being should really rightly have to deal with. It's because we're malfunctioning in some way. Now, I always put it this way, right? If I've got the flu and I have a test done as, oh, you've got the flu, Mr. Box, then that won't make my flu any worse to know that I've got the flu. Okay, so then, and also it might help me because now I can get my flu remedy, because that's what I've got. So here's the countermeasure to that thing that you've got going on with you at the moment. Yeah.
Right.
If you tell somebody they have an anxiety disorder, stroke condition, stroke illness, you will instantly cause them to have higher levels of anxiety, because now you're anxious about your perceived malfunction or your perceived pathology. So it will inevitably cause higher anxiety. Now, the interesting thing about that is the counter argument there is that, oh, but we need to know we've got anxiety so that we can treat anxiety. And here's the thing, whether somebody's given you the diagnosis of anxiety disorder or not, as far as I'm aware, for the work I do, and I think the work you do, Howard, it doesn't alter how we're going to work with what's going on with you as an individual, whether or not you have been given an official diagnosis. Because human beings dealing with anxiety is, it's the human condition. It's not an illness. It's not a maladaptive. It's not a malfunction. It's a human being having an emotion. And even when it gets out of control, turns into that visceral, physical stuff that we don't like, the fight or flight response, that's still not broken. That's okay. Let's start to relate differently to our stressors and that sort of thing. So that's the big myth that I think people get given, and as a result, it causes damage, is that anxiety is your illness, rather than an emotion that your mind is focusing too deeply on right now.
All right, I totally agree. Totally agree. And it's funny because I remember someone coming to see me and they were like, I feel broken. I'm broken. And I was like, why? And they go, because I'm terrified of dogs. And I was like, okay. But like... and then as we're talking, apparently when they were 5 years old, they'd been attacked by a dog. And I'm thinking, well, that's not broken. The brain's doing what it should do. Like if you're 5 and you get attacked by a dog, right? I tell you what broken would be, right? You get attacked by a dog at 5 years old and the 5-year-old turns around and goes, oh, God, that was awful. Let's go find more dogs.
Yeah. That would be the weird response.
That's broken.
Yeah.
But it's not broken to go, right, like some part of me wants to keep me safe and protected, so maybe I should avoid these. That's normal. That's doing what it should do. So I think you're absolutely right. So look, 2 for the price of 1, because normally I'll share an anxiety beating myth, but we've got 2 now, so why not? I'll tell you my anxiety beating myth that actually it's interesting because I'll mention this and some of you will go, well, no, that's not a myth, because I've tested that out. That actually works. But it's this. People, I rail against, and here's the myth, that distraction is a good thing to do. People say if you want to overcome anxiety, distract yourself. Fundamentally, I think this is really problematic, and it doesn't work, despite the fact that I have lots of people who say, no, Howard, you don't understand, distraction does work. It does work for me. But here's what I mean. Number 1, oh my God, people that have followed me for a while will just go, oh God, not this metaphor again. But, if my 8-year-old came running into my bedroom one night and said, Daddy, there's a monster under the bed, how effective would it reassure him if I said, there's no monster, but whatever you do, don't look it in the eye? He'd go, what? So there really is a monster? It would, because in telling him he mustn't see it or he has to distract himself from it, it would actually give credibility to it. It would actually imply that it's a threat, that it was dangerous. So if his whole orientation was to now go, I mustn't look at the monster, don't see the monster, it all implies A, the monster's real, and B, the monster's there.
Yeah, exactly.
So that kind of reinforces the problem. Why I think a lot of people go, distraction does work, is this. They have noticed that maybe as they're busy doing things in the cut and thrust of the day, they suddenly find themselves not paying attention to it. They've got absorbed somewhere else.
Yeah, as they say, if I've got something to do, if I've got something to keep me busy, my anxiety doesn't flare up. Yeah, exactly.
But I think there's a big difference, and it's an important distinction to make between trying to distract yourself, actively trying, I mustn't look at that, don't look at that, don't look, and just becoming naturally and absorbed in other stuff.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think it's like, I think I've heard you say this, that if there's a tiger in the room, simply saying, try and don't think about it. Look at look at your phone or something like that. Take your mind off it. That isn't going to help, because there's still a part of your mind saying, no, hang on. I think if I do turn my attention away from this, then it's going to be dangerous. The tiger's going to get me. You know what I mean? So I think you're absolutely right. When we're in the midst of, I'm in high anxiety, distraction isn't going to be effective. And as you say, if we believe, I need my distraction tools to deal with anxiety, it just suggests there's something maladaptive that we need to have our countermeasures in place for. Exactly. And I totally agree. It just perpetuates the myth that there's something wrong with feeling anxious about life's natural stresses.
110%. Absolutely.
We're going to do this. We're just going to agree with each other. There's not. Even...
I know. Wouldn't that be annoying? I mean, part of this, we should have there should be like a punch up, shouldn't there? That we should argue.
We should try and find something we disagree on. But
yeah, absolutely. John says, "Evening, Howard and Tim." Hello, John.
Good evening, John.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You know what? This idea that we're going to agree on everything kind of makes me angry. Is that the worst
segue?
Do you like that? Do you like that? Well, do you know what? Talking about funny segues, for anyone that watches The Apprentice, I have this ongoing thing where, Alan Sugar will always start out the beginning of the episode, and I always laugh. The segues are so ridiculous.
Oh God, yeah.
We're here in a theatre, because when you're in a theatre, it's like a show, which is why this week we're going to be making toothpaste, because we like to show our teeth. And there are always these ridiculous kind of segues that never make any sense. It's it really tickles me. Sorry, right. So,
anyway.
Distracted Howard. Yeah. I thought it's time to have a rant. And let's share something that we get angry about. Right. Tim, do you want to go first or second?
Oh God, I don't know. You know what I get angry about? People asking me to decide whether I'm going to go first or second when I'm...
Use that anger. There we go. You can go.
All right, this isn't really a rant. This is just mildly perturbed by... I'm not ranting, it doesn't spoil my day, but it does make me roll my eyes and tut a little bit.
So it's Howard rants and Tim's mildly irritated.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Tim's unimpressed. That sort of thing. But anyway, so I've done a video on this as well, actually, now I think about it. Yep. Instagram posts, and I say Instagram, it could be TikTok, but I don't spend much time on TikTok because, I'm a 49-year-old man and I shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? That app's not for me. I know, Howard, you're quite a fan of TikTok, but, I'm not making a judgment here. Maybe that's the thing we disagree on. Should have on TikTok or not? Anyway,
I often find people that haven't managed to build up followings on platforms seem to dispute them the most.
Ouch! Oh no, hang on. I'm wounded. No, that's true. That's fair enough. Yeah, honestly, if people were interested in my stuff on TikTok, I'd probably enjoy hanging out there, wouldn't I? But anyway, okay. So posts where you get. I think I would like to think well-meaning anxiety advice channels. You get a lot of people on the internet who aren't necessarily... You get two types of people. People that are very qualified and very trained, and they're invested in just showing you their knowledge and let me explain to you what's so terrible about anxiety, that kind of thing. But you also get people who have purely done the thing of they've had their own journey with it. And so they very much come from the reality that anxiety is the thing you will have to manage for the rest of your life, that kind of thing. And all they post about is 5 indicators that you have anxiety, or 3 signs that your anxiety is getting worse, or or symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder. And it's all you get are people telling you why there's things, why you should be worried about the way you feel. Okay. Now I hope it's well-meaning, but in most instances, it's purely for clicks, for follows, for likes, because there's a lot of people out there who, as soon as they have somebody say something, they're like, that's me. Then now they're engaged, and it's fishing for subscribers and followers in the lowest common denominator way, which is by trying to give everyone the idea there's something wrong with them and that you need my channel to help you now. And there's something that I've said to my audience many times. I will never post something that is purely a title telling you why you need to click on this video, because otherwise you won't realize what's wrong with you. Yeah. I'm always, with my stuff, you're always going to get some degree of solution to the issue, to the problem that is presenting. Yeah. And you won't simply have me saying, this is why you have this problem, or this means you have an issue with this. And I think that's the problem online, is there's too much there's too much diagnosis by internet here. And people trying to tell you there's something wrong with you, because that's more engaging than telling you life's good, everything's great. Turns out that thing you're worried about, it's probably okay. Yeah, there's a lot more engagement by saying, that thing you've had in the back of your mind, yeah, that actually means there's this thing wrong with you. So you need to sort that out, and suddenly, I don't know, it just, so I said this to Britt, my other half, my wife, where I was like, I don't seem to get all these clicks that other people get. And she said, that's because you're providing a solution rather than simply trying to scoop up all those people that fear they might have an anxiety issue, And I think that's my mini rant. That's my mildly perturbed. That's my wouldn't it be nice if that didn't happen sentiment.
Yeah, well, I agree. And I do share your frustration, your mild perturbedness.
Thank you.
In that sense that, and often the things they say are just applicable to everybody. It's called being normal. And it's like 5 signs that you have anxiety, an anxiety disorder. Do you sometimes feel tired? Oh, God, I do sometimes, yeah. Have you got arms? Oh, my God. Oh, have I got legs? Have I got a head? Am I a human?
You sometimes notice your heartbeat. What? Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's honestly, and it's, I don't know, it gets on my wick a little bit, because so there was one that sticks out in my mind, and it was like, definition, generalized anxiety disorder. Yeah. And it was something like feeling mildly or highly anxious about many different things over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's being alive and caring, that you just defined there. Yeah. Being alive and mildly invested in your own well-being. That's what that is. That's not generalized anxiety disorder. That's being a human being. And I honestly, it's just, it's a struggle, isn't it? When you have to sort of constantly be telling people that come to see you, oh yeah, that thing you read on that Instagram channel, that actually didn't apply to you. That wasn't accurate for you. Yeah. Because it just gives us, I mean, you could argue it gives us a lot more business, because it means there's a lot more people out there that are struggling with their anxiety, because now they're anxious about whether or not they have an anxiety issue. But it's not conducive to a positive and enjoyable environment in life and online,
Right. I totally agree. And by the way, we're having some questions coming through, which we'll get to shortly. So if you want your questions answered, then write them on there and we'll come to them and discuss them, as many as we can. And I've allotted 17 hours for this live. You're okay with that, Tim? No. So, look, I have a particular rant that I had in mind, and that is because I saw a TikTok recently.
Oh, God.
I can feel my blood pressure raising even just saying it. And it would be not fair to say this is mildly perturbing to me. This is... honestly, it makes my blood boil. And I'll tell you why. I mean, I'll have to go and see a therapist about this. If you deal with anger, maybe I might have to come and see you. I'm going to play you a TikTok, and then I'm going to tell you what I think of it. By the way, I'm not a big fan. That's a spoiler.
Yeah, I've got a clue what you think of it already.
Yeah. You got a clue. Here we go. Let me play the TikTok. Here we go.
I'm a licensed therapist, and here's how your past can affect your present. See, when we're young, our brains are like wet cement. Then bad things happen that shouldn't have, and good things that should have happened didn't. Core beliefs form from those things. Things like, I'm a loser, I suck, I'm ugly, I'm not loved, I'm worthless. And that cement hardens as we get older and seals those messages in our brains. We might not even know they're in there, but they're causing so many of the issues that we struggle with as adults.
Right. Oh, man. Oh, God.
I'm
Where
livid.
do I even start? Right. Okay. So there's a few things. Number one, When I saw that TikTok, I was mesmerized because there were lots. I mean, it's been shared hundreds and thousands of times. The number of likes on that was just astronomical. And hold on, I brought the music back. The angry music was just riling me even further.
Triggered it with anger.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, I was mesmerized because there were just so many likes, so many shares. And I'm thinking, well, surely, come on, this can't be universally popular. And I'm looking at the comments and people are like, oh my God, this is exactly how it feels. This is, thank you for explaining. Okay, here is my problem with it. First of all, and I'm trying to be diplomatic about this, bullshit. Right. What I mean by that is this. He makes out as though that your brain is cement. Right, and that when you're young, and like the rocks of your life, the difficult periods go in there, and then it sets. Hasn't he heard of something called neuroplasticity? The brain is always changing.
Yeah,
we're always making new connections. And here's the problem: if you present to a bunch of anxiety sufferers the idea that sorry, love, I'm afraid that happened to you, and now it's stuck in there forever.
Yeah.
That is not a message of hope, and it's inaccurate.
Yeah,
and what are people supposed to do with that, Tim? Are they supposed to go, oh well, I guess it's just stuck in there now. Can't do anything about that.
This is exactly what I was saying, is that he's putting that out there so that people are like, right, so my brain is permanently damaged. I understand that now. So what I need to do then is probably find a good therapist to help me manage my brain damage for the rest of my life. And you're absolutely right. 30, 40 years ago, somebody put in that sort of video. Well, they wouldn't be putting that video out, would they? Because it'd be like on an old cine camera. Anyway, But somebody putting that out there, the general school of thought might be, yes, that's what happens. We have experiences and they show, and then our brains harden and then it doesn't change anymore. Now, as in the modern age, you know, when we've got the internet, where there's no excuse for not knowing what you're talking about because we've got access to all this information. And, you know, Johnny starts off with, I'm a licensed therapist. So what he's saying is, whatever I say, by the way, you have to just take it as true because I'm a licensed therapist. Yeah. And it's absolute, it's old thinking. And you might say, oh, but it's just a metaphor. Well, get an accurate one then. There's ways of representing what goes on with our minds that is much more accurate, even if it was just porridge that didn't set. That would be better, wouldn't it? You know what I mean? It doesn't.
And I think this points to a wider thing, really, that I'm angry about, which is, and actually just broader than that one TikTok, it's people who post stuff that gets lots of likes and attraction and people share because it feels true, but it isn't true. And that's the thing that I think we have to make a distinction between metaphors feeling true and actually being true. So it's really an urge to say, be careful of what metaphors you're buying into.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I always say this. I mean, this is one of the things I most commonly say when I'm doing my lives. The way it feels is not the way it is. And this is why when somebody says, oh, you can't understand because you don't feel what I feel. Yet the person who's outside of your circumstances not feeling what you feel actually, in many instances, has a much more accurate representation of what's going on in truth because they're not coming from a negatively biased, anxious fight or flight perspective. When we're in the midst of it, the way it feels like it's the end of the world, it feels like we're dying, it feels like there's no hope or escape from this feeling. Yeah, the truth is there absolutely is. So sometimes the person that doesn't know how it feels is actually your best ally because they can give you the true perspective of life and the situation, the circumstances compared to the way it feels. But all this guy is doing, and again, offering no solution at all, just literally trying to freak people out and trying to get them to empathize because, oh yeah, I have issues as well. Oh, that must be the problem then. You know,
absolutely.
It's fishing for likes, subscribes, and follows. And the horrible thing is that people like that with that much engagement online, that's how they're making their living. Yeah, they don't need to see any clients now because they're monetizing their channel because they've found out how to work the algorithm so that enough people get freaked out by their message.
Absolutely.
And it's actually I'm ranting now.
Can you feel that it does? It gets you.
I think I fed off your anger there.
I'm sorry. I've done that. Let's lighten the load for a second. Hold on.
Do that. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. That helps. Did that help?
Is that help with anxiety? I don't know. I don't know if it induces anxiety.
Right. Look, I've seen some questions coming in from people. So let's do what we can. I mean, there's some comments here. Here we go. So Mark says, my first feelings of anxiety were when I was 5 or 6. My hands felt like they were growing uncontrollably. It was really uncomfortable and it lasted a few years. It went away 100%. But now, at 29, I'm experiencing the worst anxiety I've ever had. Should I consider my anxiety as a child to explore my anxiety now? And I think, forget the backstory, that's really like a broader issue of how important is it to kind of go back to childhood in order to treat anxiety. I've got my own take on this, but Tim, have you got any thoughts to share?
Well, I think there's no doubt that first moment when we realise our own vulnerability, or we have our safety challenged, and we start to get very concerned about our own responses. Even when we get the other side of it, none of us are going to be immune to the next time we feel high levels of distress, it not being reminiscent of that time. And, there's probably a good case to put here for the fact there might be a little bit of your subconscious that is still feeling like that frightened child in those instances. I certainly, when I'm working with people, I would encourage them to recognize their own agency and their own ability to cope with life's challenges. Because I think that's what happens is things come at us that we maybe haven't had before. I don't know about you, Hal, but at the start of the pandemic, I was suddenly seeing a very different type of client. It was people who'd never suffered with anxiety before. They'd never had anything really challenging that they'd gone through that had pushed them to their limits. And then suddenly we're being asked to deal with a global kind of, in inverted commas, emergency that nobody has any experience of previously. And now those people that had never had to dig deep and find their coping mechanisms, they were dealing with it a lot less effectively than the people who'd struggled throughout their life, who'd had like issues in their life. Because for them, it was like, I'm sort of used to living in a semi-panic mode anyway. I just take it for stride now, So I think, there's an argument to say there may be a bit of learning from when you were younger that you can revisit that vulnerability. But again, put your focus more on who you are now, all the things you've got through in the past, and your ability to cope.
Yeah. By the way, I know we hadn't planned on talking about this, but I certainly noticed exactly that during COVID. People coming who had never responded with anxiety before. But then on the other hand, lots of people who struggle with anxiety stopped coming to see me. And I think that's interesting because I think what it did was it sort of like, instead of feeling like, oh God, I'm the only one, what's wrong with me? It was like, oh great, everyone's anxious. It legitimized it. It made it normal. So actually...
And also, we couldn't go outside. So a lot
absolutely.
Of the people with high anxiety responses were worried about. They no longer had to ponder the fact, and now I've got to try and face the day tomorrow and things, because they had permission from the planet to just stay in their safe little cocoon. And suddenly that takes the pressure off, doesn't it? So for a lot of reasons, I think it's a weird time.
Yeah, I mean, my take on that question about like how important is it to go back to the past, I think is interesting. But I think if you look at what is the past, anyway, what you're really doing when we talk about the past is we are constructing thoughts right now.
Yeah.
And we call them memories, but really we're just constructing thoughts and we're labeling it as this happened.
Yeah.
And so there can be merit in kind of constructing those thoughts and seeing them as just thoughts. But if we get very caught up into my past makes me this way.
Yeah.
Then what can you do? Because you can't change the past.
No,
what we really need to do is, can we look and change our relationship to the thoughts about the past? And that can be done whether or not, like, you don't have to figure out past trauma or where it comes from in order to change your current relationship with your thinking.
This is it. I think sometimes when we go for therapy, we make the mistake of thinking that we're going to have to, like you say, revisit it, go back to it. And we don't have to revisit what happened to formulate new strategies for the future. And I think, that's a really good point there. I think that it's not about unpacking that and understanding it differently. It's about recognizing where we are now and recognizing that maybe the old vulnerabilities that are being sort of coming to the surface again don't actually apply in this instance, because we're not a 5-year-old child that didn't understand how to stay safe, didn't understand those new experiences. We're an adult and we've got loads of experience of dealing with life, and perhaps we've got every right to consider ourselves a little bit less vulnerable, maybe a little bit more bulletproof against life's challenges than we're giving ourselves credit for, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another question here. Hi, guys. I've been struggling with what could be described as agoraphobia. I've attended a few shows, concerts, and have been completely consumed or distracted by anxiety and a desire to flee. Any tips? Shall I dive in and then see what you
dive in. Go on.
I think agoraphobia. Look, I suffered terribly with agoraphobia when it was one of the things that I really struggled with. And agoraphobia typically people talk about as being a fear of being out in the open, wide open spaces. And then people often think of things like claustrophobia as being the opposite. It's being enclosed. But I think claustrophobia and agoraphobia are almost identical. It's the fear of being trapped, that you cannot get out of a situation. Now, if I'm in a big, wide open space, or I'm in a few show or a concert, right, and you start worrying about freaking out, and you don't like the sensations and the feeling, what you have is this, and I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I can't get to help, or I can't get out, and I can't escape the situation. It's really the same trapped sensations that often emerge. But I think the thing is to recognize more often than not, when I've worked with claustrophobics or agoraphobics, it's not the being in the situations that's actually the problem. It's the fear of, what if I panic in the situation?
Yeah, fear of what it's going to trigger in you, and it comes from that.
And if I panic, there's nowhere I can get to.
Yeah.
To be out of sight or to be in comfort.
I think we start to view like our house, or our home, as our medicine, don't we? And we're like, well, I can't be too far from my meds, you know. So we worry about straying too far from home, because if panic strikes, my medicine is to be back at home. That's where I'm calm. So if I go too far away, it means it will take longer to administer my medicine from where I am. And I think, again, our focus should probably go on the fact, to the person asking the question, I'd put the focus on the fact that you use the word consumed. Yeah, you weren't consumed because you're still here. And even though you had the feeling of fleeing, here you are and you're alive. Okay, I think there's going to be times, there's going to be things that challenge us. Yeah, and if we've got a fear of us having some sort of panic, then the further we are away from the place that we know will instantly stop the panic, as in our home, it would be natural to be like, oh, I hope I don't have a panic right now. And I think sometimes we just got to sit with that discomfort and realize that even if we did, we will not die. Panic is not fatal. It will pass at some point, probably sooner than we expect as well. And nothing about these feelings can damage or hurt or hinder our progress through life in any way, unless we choose to respond in the face of them, you know, in terms of we do flee or we decide not to go out and things like that. I think sometimes it's worth putting our attention on the fact, not that it was a struggle, but that we overcame that struggle and we got the other side of it in some way. Mm-hmm.
By the way, I'm going to add a bit more to that, but still to come, we are going to be giving you some anxiety beating techniques, as well as giving you a nice, gentle meditation so that you can go into the weekend feeling utterly brilliant. But just to add, I'm going to do two questions at once. How about that? Because I want to add something to that question. But when I tuned in earlier, Tim, to your YouTube Live, someone asked a question, and I thought it was such a good question, I wanted to kind of touch upon it here.
Yeah.
And the question that was asked, and I can't remember who asked it, but it was something along the lines of, what's the first step to anxiety recovery? What's the first step? And I've often talked about this. And the first step for me is always to go, because here's what happens. Some people, they go, I just feel anxious. I just feel anxious. What can I do? I just feel anxious. And my first step always is to get curious. To get curious about just before I felt anxious, what precisely were the thoughts, i.e. the images or the internal dialogue that I had that preceded this feeling? Because the tendency is to kind of point outwards always and go like, for example, the concert or being surrounded or out in the open makes me feel anxious. As though it's the situation out there that's causing it. But actually, if you start going, okay, what was that thing that Howard said? Yeah, get curious. Like when you're in the concert, what actually are the images or the words that you're saying to yourself? That's the thing that you're responding to. And without getting curious and figuring it out, it's really hard to figure out, well, what precisely are the tips? Because actually, so the analogy I often give to people is, well, Tim, what order do you get dressed in the morning?
I think it's got to involve my pants fairly early on, I would say.
I love that. No, I'm not committal, but something to do with pants and something to do with fairly early on.
That's probably what occurs first, I think.
I love that. Yeah. But you see, here's the thing, right? What would you say? What do you think I would have said if you said to me, Howard, there's no order. I'm naked and then dressed.
Yeah, that's true. It feels like clothes just happen.
Yeah, it just is. But of course, here's the thing. And some people, by the way, they don't know what order they get dressed in the morning because they do it so often. They just I don't really think about it. But we all know intuitively there has to be a sequence.
Yes.
And so when people say, I just feel anxious, to me, I hear that like someone saying, I'm naked and then dressed. Yeah. And the getting curious is a bit like going, it's an invitation to go, what are the steps in between the feeling okay and feeling anxious? What's the thinking?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because a lot of times people say it just happens. There is no thought, and yet not for no reason does your mind do anything. There's always a reason. Yeah. Right. So and sometimes we're not aware of it because, like you say, it's happened in such a subconscious way. It's happened so outside of our conscious focus that we only notice it when it starts to become a distressing situation, a distressing thought or response. But of course, there always is something. And I think this is another sort of, sorry to go back to the rant, but another thing that I see people saying a lot, because anxiety can strike out of nowhere for no reason. And it can't. There's always a reason. We don't always know what that is until we stop and slow the process down and think about it a little bit. But yeah, because also if you show it curiosity, then you're not showing it fear. And so you stop feeding the feedback loop of fear and anxiety. Because if we can say it's okay, so we talk about first steps. My answer to this one, by the way, the first thing that I always try and get my clients to understand is that there's absolutely nothing wrong with feeling anxious. That's not a mistake, because anxiety is a perfectly natural human emotion. And I think it's important that we understand that every healthy, functional human being will feel anxious probably every single day. Yeah. So, for example, Howard, you about an hour and a quarter ago, you found out you'd forgotten the keys to the office to open up. So there's anxiety about I've got to get home, get the keys, get back to the office, and unlock the office to get on this live at 8 o'clock.
No, that didn't happen. I was really prepared.
Thank God you were, because were you coming into the office at the very last moment to log on? But what I mean, there's all these things. So and the fact that so I'm sitting on the sofa at just gone 7 o'clock. It's anxiety that says, oh, I've still got that live to do with Howard, haven't I? Yeah. Otherwise, I wouldn't remember anything of any importance in my life. I'd get nothing done. So it's important that we realise anxiety is meant to be there. Not just, oh, we can tolerate it. It's allowed. It's okay. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong. No, it's meant to be there. If you didn't feel anxious from one moment or from one, every day, that would be a disorder. Because you'd be one emotion short of the full set that we're meant to have. And that wouldn't be functional. So that's the first thing that I want, the first step that I want people to take, is to realise when I feel anxious, that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Linda says, I have bad days more with the fear of fear. Can't seem to let it go. Is that anxiety? Yeah, that's textbook anxiety, fearing the fear. And guess what? Fear doesn't feel good, so your mind starts running 10 to the dozen, going, I hope I don't feel this way tomorrow, later. And it's the perception of ongoing suffering that kind of fuels it. But it's kind of nice to realise that it is kind of normal and not to worry about that as a pattern. Oh, I'm going to put this one on the screen. Here we go. Look at this. Here we go. Wanted to take the opportunity to thank you both for all the content you've put out. It's been a great help to me during these last couple of years. David, it's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really.
That makes it worthwhile, that sort of comment. And that's, just to know that we're, we do this stuff, and to know that it's not just going out there into the internet and being lost forever, and the fact that people are seeing it and getting benefit from it. That's what makes it. Because it's like, I think sometimes people see people on YouTube, especially with such a fancy live stream setup as Howard's got, and you're like, oh, they're pro YouTubers, aren't they? That's what they do for a living. And it's like, no, we talk to people one-to-one. We sit in a chair and talk to people and try and help them every day. But we do this because we've recognised that in some capacity, this enables more people to hear what we've got to say, and so we can help more people than just doing one-to-one. So, to actually get feedback that just these little videos that we put out, it absolutely makes it worthwhile. That's why we're here on a Friday night.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a privilege as well. It really is. It's a privilege to do that. John says, and it'll become clear in a moment when I tell you John's an actor. He said, I was dropped by my agent the other day, and for no apparent reason. Well, before I even go on, that sucks.
Yeah.
This sent my anxiety sky high. On the plus side, I was offered representation by someone else. I'm still feeling anxious. Why? I mean, look, by the way, sorry, just to clarify, he also says, I also suffer with IBS, and this elevated after my previous agent terminated my contract. I mean, Tim, feel free to add to this, but from my point of view, I think a lot of things happen where we have a movie, a story in our mind about how we think our life is going to go, and the plot points of it. Do you like the way I'm interweaving the fact that he's an actor into my metaphorical answer? Right?
Super.
However, suddenly something happens and the movie that we have playing in our mind goes, hold on a second. Like something, this isn't expected. What's going on here? And though something even potentially positive can have happened, there can be this period of readjustment where your thoughts about what should be happening right now versus what is happening are kind of skewed. And I've seen really dramatic examples of this where, for example, someone loses a loved one or a partner, and they've been imagining a life of togetherness and growing old together, and suddenly something unexpected happens, and on the one hand they know it's happened, but on the other hand they're still living the life that they always planned, and these two things don't marry up. So I think A, it's normal to feel that way, and B, giving yourself some time and permission to allow time to kind of acclimatize with whatever new scenario is coming up, good or bad, is kind of worth doing.
Yeah, I think I always think of it this way. When something bad happens, a bit of our mind gets the job of working out what did we do to cause that, or what didn't we do to stop it, so that we can be safe from it in the future. So we develop this is why we have fears of certain things. If we hurt ourselves on something, then the next time we see it, we'll have an instant sort of recoiling because that hurt us. So a bit of our mind is saying, stay away from that dangerous thing. Now you said in your question there, for no reason, my agent dropped me. So there's a bit of you that says, hang on, I've got highly anxious because I feel threat from the possibility of just losing my agent for no reason at all, out of nowhere. There was no explanation. I didn't do anything to deserve it, but I couldn't see it coming either, so I couldn't do anything to stop it. And there's a bit of you that's saying, work this out, stay safe from this, employ countermeasures, develop a strategy. And then, of course, there are no answers. So it becomes like a puzzle with half the pieces missing, where you've got a bit of your mind trying to solve this puzzle, but it never will be able to, because there simply isn't all the information there that you would need to solve that puzzle. I think sometimes we have to encourage that part of our mind to say, right, you need to stand down here, because there are going to be things in life that just don't make any sense. Yeah, wouldn't it be weird if we understood everything that happened, exactly why and what caused it and how we'd avoid it in the future, all that sort of thing? We don't get to do that because we're limited beings, aren't we? We're imperfect. So I think we've got to say, well, look, that happened. I lost my agent, but good news, I'm good enough at what I do to get another agent. So that's the best I can do, is respond to those weird things that life throws me and do my best to keep moving forward. I think the anxiety is a very natural response, because that part of your mind doesn't understand what caused the very negative thing to happen to you. So it's struggling to come to terms with that. But you know what? As much as I hate to suggest that shit happens is an actual strategy to combat anxiety, but sometimes it's what you need to know. You know, it's what you need to focus on.
Right. So we're going to do two more questions, and we're going to race through them as well. One of them we're going to race through because when we share some anxiety beating tips, I think there is something that will help. I know what I'm going to say. So, but Ben G says, I've had anxiety for a number of years. Now I'm back in the office at work. I'm really struggling to feel at ease and concentrate on the tasks I need to complete as I'm feeling unsettled. Any tips? There's something about the way you phrase that, Ben, which kind of makes me feel a little bit like there's an element of resistance in terms of it's like you get this feeling of feeling unsettled or you're not completely at ease. And some part of you is going, oh, I don't like this feeling. I should be completely at ease. I should feel totally comfortable all the time. And therefore, any feeling of a discomfort coming up is met with, I mustn't feel this. I mustn't feel this. And essentially, look, if I said to people, don't think about green polar bear keeps popping up. If you sit there with the focus of, I mustn't feel anything other than completely and utterly at ease, then you're going to be very triggered when anything comes up that's not totally, completely at ease. Focus in on it, become so hyper aware of it that it then becomes an issue. So
you couple that with the fact that the first thing you've said is I've had anxiety for a number of years, and you don't have anxiety. Okay, this isn't a disease that you've caught. You are feeling anxious to an extreme degree, a lot higher degree than you would like, but it isn't something that you have that you carry around with you. And I think that's important to recognize, because then it allows you, when you feel anxious, to realize, oh yeah, back in the office after a while, you know, challenging, it's obviously going to be a bit scary, rather than, oh yeah, that's because I have anxiety and that's my anxiety flaring up again. If we can sort of depathologize anxiety, allow it to be, natural emotion, that's what I'm going to feel right now, then it takes the sting out of it for us, stops us putting the focus on it and thus amplifying it.
Absolutely. Here's a quick one. Mark says, anxiety attack, panic attack, any difference? And then he goes, and then I love this, and he goes, Google tells me there's a difference.
And if your answer isn't the same as Google, I shall be instantly dropping off of this live stream.
Well, in fairness as well, Google tells me a lot of things, and all of them have to be true, you know. Go on, Tim.
Okay, so I've done a video on this one as well. Oh my God, I can't believe how many.
All right, show off with your multiple videos.
But okay, the thing that I concluded here, officially, anxiety attack isn't a thing. You don't get an official diagnosis. That's not in the big book that psychologists use. Yeah, panic attack is, anxiety attack isn't. People tend to view anxiety attacks more as, so if you've felt really highly anxious for a week, they'll refer to that as an extended anxiety attack. Whereas panic attacks are generally perceived to be the instant, oh my God, I'm going to die, and then 5 minutes later, oh, thank God I didn't die, that sort of thing. But again, the definitions for me, the distinctions are entirely arbitrary, and you'll get different opinions from different people.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you my opinion. They're the same thing. There you go. It's a sudden onset of you're freaking out.
Can I just say, I want that in an inspirational meme, Howard Cooper. They're the same thing. There you go. Howard Cooper.
I love it. Well, let's do that. Let's do that. By the way, John says, thank you guys. That makes utter sense. Ben G says, thank you both. That was very relatable. I'm very, very pleased to hear that. Right, let's move on, because I did want to also not just answer questions, but actually give a couple of really tangible tips, strategies, tools. So, get ready. If you wanted morning TV, this is the moment that feels like morning TV at its best. Here we go. Technique of the week. And we call it Technique of the Week because it rhymes and not because I do these weekly. But let's be honest, technique once in a blue moon when Howard can be asked to go on YouTube Live, I'll be honest, does not sound quite as catchy.
Catchy, is it?
No. So technique of the week. Tim, what's your technique of the week?
Okay, so I get a lot of people asking me about getting to sleep, and sleep is something that we do without thinking about it. It's not something we actively do, and yet people say to me, what can I do then of an evening to get, when I lay in bed, what do I do then to get to sleep? Okay, the only thing you've got to do is reduce your production of cortisol, the stress hormone, because then the melatonin in your system will naturally put you to sleep. Okay, so how do you reduce cortisol? You take your mind away from your stressors and the ruminating. Here's a little tip for you. Here's something you can do. You can imagine something. So you can do it with your eyes closed, which when you think about it, is the first step to going to sleep anyway. But you close your eyes and you imagine yourself in a perfect place for you. Now, this could be anywhere in the universe at any time. Somewhere you've been before and love going, somewhere you've never been but have always wanted to go. Or maybe somewhere you've just created out of nothing in your mind's eye at this time. But everything about this place, wherever and whenever it is, everything is perfect. So the lighting, the temperature, nothing gets in there except you and whatever you would choose to put there to make it just the perfect place for you. And the thing is, it's going to be very personal to you. So my one, for example, is like a beach with the waves gently lapping in, very, very calm ocean. And there's a moon shining onto the water, and it's warm. It's lovely and warm, and there's a breeze. And actually, the sky has a little purple hue to it, because I like that, as you can see from the lights I've got. And my wife's there, and we're just sort of chilling out. And sometimes she'll walk and paddle in the water, and I'll see her silhouette against the moon and things like that. And that's my perfect place, because you know what? When I'm there, something about my mind says, Tim, you have nothing to do right now. You are absolutely at peace, and there's no concerns in your mind whatsoever. And all you've got to do is hang out there. Yeah, I don't want you to start make plans to conquer the world or become everyone loves me and it's so exciting. It's like literally the place that gives you nothing to do, mentally, emotionally, anything like that. Any anxiety, concern, worries, they don't even get in this place. They're not allowed. They cannot penetrate this place. And if you just say, right, I'm going to go to bed, I'm not going to try and get to sleep. In fact, I don't care if I sleep or not, because I just enjoy spending my time in this perfect place. And if I get to spend a couple of hours here just hanging out doing that, isn't that awesome? I guarantee you won't get to, because you'll have dozed off long before you get anywhere remotely into that place. Yeah, but it's one of those things where I've always had success with it for myself and for clients as well, because it just tells your mind it speaks the language of the subconscious, because it's your imagination. And I'm not a visualizer, by the way, so don't think, I can't visualize. No. What I do, if you're not a visualizer, by the way, here's a tip. Close your eyes. All you got to do is imagine, if I opened my eyes right now, this is what I would see. And then formulate what you believe you would see if you opened your eyes. Yeah, so you don't have to picture it. You just have to, in some way, know that's what's waiting for you on the other side of your eyelids. That makes sense.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Give it a go and let us know in the comments how you get on with it. That would be cool. Right, I've got a technique. This is a technique I call, and it's so easy, it's called the Unplug Anxiety Hack. It is just, it's one of my go-to things that I give to people, and it's very simple, very easy, and very effective. Here's what you do. You know when you have like a negative thought, like a what-if, catastrophic moment of like, well, it could be Ben going, what if I don't feel totally comfortable at ease in the office? Or what if I'm freaking out in the concert, right? And your heart begins to go and you start to get anxious. All you do is you allow yourself to repeat that same thought, but you add in this phrase beforehand, very consciously. I'm experiencing the thought, what if I freak out in the concert? I'm experiencing the thought, what if I'm not at ease? Because there's a big difference, and you can apply this to all places, right? There's a big difference between, for example, I could do it about myself. I could go, I am worthless. And if I really get caught up in the I am worthless story, I'm likely to feel something. Whereas if I remind myself, I'm just experiencing the thought I'm worthless, it creates more distance and it creates a more sense of detachment from it. And that can really help. So even just reminding yourself, I'm experiencing the thought, what if this happens, is a really cool, easy thing that you can do.
I love that. That's brilliant. I can even, as I think about it now, I can see exactly how it works.
Right. No, you're experiencing the thought.
Of
you can see it working.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So there you go. That is anxiety beating technique of the week. I have to tell people, it's been so great, Tim, having you here and sharing these things. And I love this, and I like to ham it up a little bit because why not? It's a bit of fun. Rather than me just sort of droning on for however long, and just question after question after question after question, like some people.
That Tim Box.
No, listen, by the way, I have to tell people, I'm a huge fan of Tim's stuff. We often speak and talk shop and share ideas and collaborate on stuff. And if there's someone that you should follow and follow their socials, it is absolutely Tim Box. And Tim, if people do like what they've heard and they want to go over and follow you, tell us, where can they go? What can they do?
Can they do? Well, okay, the best place to go to regularly get content from me is YouTube, is where we are now. But my channel is Tim Box Mind Coach. Also, now we've got handles. I think it's just at Tim Box Mind Coach, which is the same as it is on Instagram as well. And I post daily on Instagram now as well. I finally worked out how to do that. But if you are interested in what I do to a greater degree, then you can go to my website. The website really is there to service not just people that want to become one-to-one clients, but also people that want to train with me and become, do what myself and Howard do to help other people, which I should warn you, by the way, is the best job in the world. It's the most fulfilling thing you can do in your life. So, but anyway, all of that stuff, but YouTube is probably the best place to get regular anxiety advice and content on that sort of stuff.
Fantastic! Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. And look, you're welcome to go. You're welcome to stay. But I thought that it would be nice to finish with 2-3 minutes, just gentle relaxation, just to help you all connect. And by the way, if when we do this, this bit that I call the anxiety release phase, if you wanted to imagine a safe place, that perfect place that Tim suggested, then you could absolutely go ahead and do that. And that might be a really nice way to do this. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I invite you all to do is, if you'd like to, close your eyes. If you feel more comfortable keeping them open and just paying attention to my words, then feel free. Because what's important is that you only feel as comfortable as you're all comfortable being. I mean, you don't want to feel more comfortable than you're comfortable being. But as you listen and focus in on the sounds, just notice how, as I've begun to just slow down, you too can begin to slow down your own thinking. Because if you think about it, it's Friday night. It's been a busy day. It's been a busy week. And wouldn't it be really nice just to take a moment to, as you take a breath out, just to allow any tension, any stresses of the week, of the day, just to drift away. And if tension or anxiety or stress had a colour as it leaves your body, what colour would it be? And with each breath, imagine that colour dissipating, dissolving, to create space inside for you just to breathe in relaxation and slow down. And when you go and get into bed at the end of the evening, imagine thinking through Tim's strategy, where you can go inside and find that perfect place. And you know what that place is for you. And you can build out the details of that place. Who would be there, if anyone? What would the temperature be like? What would the feelings be like? Would you be lying down somewhere, sitting down, or standing? Whatever place you feel the most comfortable. Imagine going there in your mind and becoming so absorbed in that, you can just allow yourself to feel relaxed. And imagine you could take that relaxed feeling into the weekend, so that over the coming days ahead, you find yourself just thinking clearer, feeling more confident, feeling a little calmer. And perhaps you notice that even though you're feeling calmer, you have a little moment of anxiety, a thought of what if this happens, but you remember to add in, I'm just experiencing the thought. What if that happens? Or maybe you add in, I'm just experiencing a sensation of heart racing. Enough that it gives you clarity of thought. Imagine how different your weekend is as you remember to use these ideas. And with that in mind, count in your mind from 5 to back up to 1. Reinforce all the positive suggestions. Run through all the great strategies you've been hearing this evening. And when you get to 1, you'll open your eyes, you'll take a breath, you'll stretch, you'll feel nicely calm, nicely relaxed, and ready for a great weekend. 5, 4, 3, 2, getting ready to come all the way back out, feeling an inexplicable feeling of well-being. And 1. Eyes open all the way back out. There we go. It's been such a privilege. I've really enjoyed spending a little bit of time with you all, and I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, please like, share, and spread the message. And go follow Tim. I know the stuff that he shares is great and has great value, will help a lot of people. So please spread that message too. And again, if you want me to handle any of your questions, and maybe we didn't have time for them, drop the comments in the comments below. Any questions that you want me to handle on future Anxiety Beating Lives. And my plan is to do these at least once a month, maybe even twice a month. And we will see you soon. So hoping you have a great weekend. And I'm waffling now as I try and find the button for my end screen. Where is it? Ah, there it is. See you all soon.